This is Dan in Kent, one of our regulars. Good morning to you, Dan. Very good morning to you, Mr. Bull. Looking forward to the show. I only have one message today, and that's lest we forget. Good morning, David, says Anthony. As you said, today is Remembrance Day, the day that we, the people, say thanks to those who made the ultimate sacrifice, and yet we have these parliamentarians wrecking all of what these heroes who gave their lives were trying to preserve. Keep all of these messages coming in, please. Good morning, David. As you said, today, this is Remembrance Day, a really important day. Lots of you on the same theme here. Maureen says the Gen Z are not as stupid as previous generations. They've worked out that if they join the forces, they end up homeless, sleeping on the street, and that is what we are trying to address, and that's what Hugh and I were talking about as well. Yeah. How we actually look after people who have served this country, who have ensured that we stay safe. We'll talk more about that later. As I said, Sarah Austin, chair of Beyond the Wire, will be joining me later on. Also, in a moment, I'll be talking to Lord Richard Dannett, former head of the British Army, on this really important day. Let's take you through the front pages, though, this morning, if we can. The Sunday Telegraph this morning, the big headline this morning, rebel farmers threaten blockades. I love farmers. I love the fact they are thinking about this. This is all about the government, of course, and imposing inheritance tax, or the increase in inheritance tax on farmers, and rebel farmers threatening to blockade ports and starve supermarkets of food in protest against government tax rises. They're also plotting to withhold produce and livestock in a bid to trigger food shortages. This is a huge backlash against Rachel Reeves and the budget. And essentially, she placed a 20% inheritance tax on farmers' assets worth more than $1 million in her first budget. I think this is direct action. We've seen this across the EU as well. I don't know how political you want to get, but it seems to me that the great and the good of Westminster living in Islington have no idea where their food comes from or how rural communities work.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. I'm really happy to bang the drum on this one, because I have a lot of friends who are farm down in Kent and up in Yorkshire, etc. And there's an argument to say that agriculture, utilities, should all fall under the Ministry of Defence, under the Defence umbrella, because if we haven't got food and milk and produce, and we cannot fire up our ovens and microwaves and heat our homes, and what's the point of defending ourselves?
Well, I would agree. I would agree totally. We need to change your mic because we've got a little sound problem. But just as we do that, I mentioned this yesterday, farmers are also threatening to have a sewage sludge strike. So essentially they take sewage and they spread it on the land. It is a very good agricultural fertiliser, and they are threatening not to take that. That will cause chaos for water companies because they're going to have to dispose of it. So this is the front page of the Sunday Telegraph. Rebel farmers threaten blockades. Now, also in Rachel Reeves' budget, she has increased employers' national insurance. The big headline this morning in the Sunday Times, £1 billion budget bill for Tesco fuels price rise fears. Tesco is facing a £1 billion increase in national insurance this Parliament. 200 business leaders are calling on Rachel Reeves to water down the tax rise. This is all because she has found this fiscal black hole that she says of $20 billion. She is planning to raise $25 billion through higher employer national insurance contributions. And here we are again. We've got, you know, Rachel Reeves, when she delivered that budget, initially I didn't think it was as bad as I expected. But again, she hasn't thought this through, in my humble opinion. When you've got people like Lord Rose, who is saying, hang on a minute, this is going to hit us. The rise in employer national insurance means, ultimately, we will have to employ fewer people, we will have to pay them less than we were going to do, and fundamentally, food prices are going to go up. Again, the government is not listening.
No, they're not, and they perhaps should take a lesson from what's just happened, across the pond. That was one on two main things: more money in your pocket and less people coming across the borders. And ultimately, human beings, it's about human self-preservation, and they need more money in their pockets.
It is extraordinary. You've got the bosses of Sainsbury's, Asda, Morrison's, all saying that these rises will cost them £1.3 billion. As you say, well, of course, who's going to pay for that? Well, it'll be us, won't it? The Observer front page this morning. Real concerns about Donald Trump getting into office. Lots of liberal meltdowns going on. I'll show you a video which had me in stitches at about 7 o'clock this morning. This is the headline in the Observer. We will oppose Trump's plans to slap tariffs on the UK. This is Rachel Reeves. Apparently she's going to use this keynote speech. This is the Mansion House speech, which is the annual showpiece for the Chancellor to outline a post-budget plan to go for growth. She is essentially going to challenge Donald Trump. He is threatening to impose tariffs on goods from other countries. We talked about this yesterday. There may be exemptions for the United Kingdom, but this is no way to treat Donald Trump. He's hardly going to be quaking in his boots, is he?
No, our little island's not going to have much of a dent on his economy, and yet again our politicians seem to forget there are two sides to a border.
but also, you see, this is the madness of the whole thing. Donald Trump fundamentally likes the United Kingdom. In the Telegraph this morning, there are pictures of him leafing through a book talking about how much respect he had for the former Queen. But again, Labour just seems very prickly over any kind of a relationship with the United States, and they are our most important ally.
Yeah, no, they're absolutely. So let the business people get on and run the businesses. You know, again, it's politicians getting involved. And I'll talk about the military and the veterans, but there's always a lot of empty talk, and I just, you know, I'd much rather see people who know what they're talking about, whether it's Lord Rose or it's Richard Branson or Trump or whoever, whoever, you know, floats your boat. But stay out of it, politicians.
But we were talking about this yesterday. I think when you look at the front bench, not one of them has ever run a business. That is a deeply worrying state of affairs.
Yeah, that's not a new thing, is it? When we look at the past government, no, absolutely. And I always think Queen Victoria had it right when she had a surgeon running a medical side, a general running the army, an admiral running the navy, you know, and someone from the judiciary running the judicial.
Why do you think we don't do that anymore? It would seem eminently sensible. I was talking to my mother about this, and she was saying when she worked in hospitals, they actually had doctors who were medical superintendents running those hospitals.
Yeah.
It seems ultimately sensible that you actually have a clinician to run a hospital, and as you say, possibly a general to run the army, the armed forces.
Yeah, no, 100%. And let's talk about the NHS. How could we not? You know, we have thousands of medically qualified veterans, many who have done 10, 15, 20 years on the front line, you know, saving lives in the dark, under fire, and then cannot become nurses because they're not graduates.
This is nonsense. This is Project 2000 that was brought in.
That was 2008 that became law, that you had to be a graduate. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous that we've got, you know, so many who could go in and fill these huge holes within the NHS manpower requirement, but they're not great.
So have you made any kind of representation to government about that?
I have many. Well, since I started recruiting veterans into employment, I've had now 8 prime ministers come and go. I have banged my drum about this.
And what do they say?
Well, they all think it's an absolutely great idea, makes complete sense, but it seems to me that there's a total breakdown between government departments. Quite why, you know, the Minister for Health can't sit down over a brew with the Minister for Defence and say, how many of you got coming out? And let's bring in Minister for Education. And let's fast-track these highly experienced individuals. They're quite happy putting in cannulas, quite happy carrying out open heart surgery.
But you see, for a long time, I have called for a reserve medical army made up of people like me, people who have medical training, who don't necessarily work full-time in the NHS. But we could easily be there on standby. They don't want to know. They're not interested.
No, and you know, I've a big shout out to EasyJet, who we've just we have a partnership with, and we're recruiting former military aviation engineers.
Wow.
16 will be starting in February for EasyJet, where they will be fast-tracked through and given a B1, B2 licence. Well done, EasyJet. They've seen, OK, we've got these individuals with transferable skills. Let's bring them on board. Let's push them hard and get them upskilled.
Absolutely.
Why aren't we doing that in the NHS?
Or any other industry or sector. Absolutely. Yeah. Hugh, thank you for the moment. Good morning. This is Weekend Breakfast, 6:34, Sunday, November the 10th, Remembrance Sunday. I'm asking this morning, how important is Remembrance Sunday to you? I find it just incredibly poignant, and just to watch people walk past the cenotaph, I think, is really emotional, very stirring. And I speak as someone with loads of friends in the military, former people who were in the military as well. And I'm just really keen to know how important is Remembrance Sunday to you. Also, Gen Z, there's a big article, I think, this morning saying that Gen Z would rather work for Deliveroo than serve our great country. What's behind that? Your thoughts on all of that, please. 0344 499 1000. Those calls charged at the national rate. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. Text costs £1 standard network rate. You can also message us on X as well at talkTV. I'm joined this morning by Hugh Andree, CEO of Weserved, Veterans Community Marketplace and former British Army captain. Let's go through the rest of this morning's front pages. The Mail. This is really interesting. Headline, reveal who stumped up millions for Royal Lodge. This is Prince Andrew. So if you remember, of course, he was going to be thrown out of Royal Lodge, and suddenly he has found some money, millions of pounds to stay there. The King actually stopped paying his brother the £3 million a year security bill. This is a very small house indeed, 30 bedrooms. I think I could manage there. And essentially the King wanted him to move into more modest accommodation, but suddenly Prince Andrew seems to have found the cash, and there are now calls for him to reveal where that money came from. But the keeper of the Privy Purse, that's Sir Michael Stevens, has approved the financing as coming from legitimate sources. Also, the King has also severed his brother's annual personal allowance, believed to be about £1 million a year. Do you think it's important that we know where that money came from?
Personally, I'm not particularly interested. He's probably got a pot stashed at the bottom of the garden, and I don't think we'll perhaps find out where it's come from, to be honest.
I would agree with that. And it's just interesting in terms of the King is obviously playing quite hardball, but also actually the King is very keen. The royal family are seen. You know, the late Queen said that, didn't she? You have to be seen to be believed. And I think the King is following suit, opening, for example, parts of Buckingham Palace that weren't open before, other royal residences, for example. I think he's really grown into the job.
Yeah, I'm a royalist, obviously, but I think there should be a far smaller royal family. I think a direct line.
But don't you think it's already quite small? Because actually, when you look at the working royals, with Kate out of action, as she has been recently, you've got William. Harry's nowhere to be seen, of course. He's, well, we'll see how long he lasts in California, now that Trump is back in. but you've essentially got William and Kate. Princess Anne, who I think is absolutely amazing.
For me, she's the template, and as are her children.
Yeah.
Who've never had a title. They work hard. And I think most people would agree that's where it should be.
I mean, isn't it interesting, though, about Harry and Trump? And, of course, there are real questions over what Trump is going to do with regards to the visa that he is sitting on and why he is still in the United States.
Yeah, but that's Donald Trump, and he'll probably find out they're golfing buddies tomorrow.
Well, that is also true. That is also true.
Depends how much funding can go Donny's way.
Or possibly how much he thinks it would harm the royal family. Because, of course, he's
no fool. I mean, people... He didn't get to where he is by being an idiot.
No, I would agree with that. Let's move on to the Sunday Express. Brave Kate returns to work. I obviously missed this last night, which was the celebration, the Remembrance celebration in the Royal Albert Hall, because I was in bed. But the Princess of Wales is ready to return to royal duties, with overseas tours lined up in the new year. All the papers actually... Great copy on Kate, with a lovely picture on the front page of the Express this morning. Great to see you smile again. She looks radiant back in the Royal Albert Hall. She really is a William's Rock.
Yes, and popular.
And very popular.
And does a good job.
She's again a model royal.
Yeah, she has humility. That's what always. I don't know her clearly, but it strikes me when you hear her speak and what she says. She comes across as quite a humble.
I think she cares.
Person. Yeah, yeah.
And you can see that when she visits charities or people who are unwell. You can see that. She also, I mean, in many ways, she has the same skill set that Diana had, understanding normal people.
Yeah, I was very privileged. I had lunch with Princess Diana 3 times.
Wow.
And sat next to her, and she did eat all her food. And she was really amusing and would talk to anyone. And I can see William's, Williams has a wife who probably has elements of her that remind him of his mother, who was a very caring...
Well, don't they say you marry your mother?
Allegedly. I'm going to hold my counsel on that one.
Let's move on.
God bless you, Mum.
Let's move on to the Mirror now. Kate will soon be back at work, so the same story from the Mirror there. Kate, as I say, looking resplendent there yesterday, the Sunday People. Kate's tour de force, Will's hopes of lining up trips as she does more next year. The Sun on Sunday, also with a very similar headline, back on duty. The Princess of Wales beams at a remembrance event last night as husband William revealed she may go on a foreign tour next year. They say this is her radiant return at the Royal Albert Hall. It comes as she continues to recover following her treatment for cancer. She will be at the Cenotaph later on, of course, which is later on this morning. Big story in the Daily Star, very, very concerning. Dear Santa, this year, can I please have a pony, an Xbox and 33,000 more Father Christmases? Apparently there is a real problem because grottos across the country are facing threats. There aren't enough Father Christmases.
No, just sort of underneath that headline, I was thinking about it on the way in here today. I've watched family members Christmas over the years, and presents get bigger and shinier. And I remember, you know, we kind of had a rule in our family, £30. That was the max, etc.
Do you have a rule now?
No. There's a little bit of a rule. It's not £30, but sometimes I just think, why don't we make everyone something next year? Just cook them something, make them some chutneys, take it all out, because I just feel sometimes it's just becoming a little bit too commercial.
I would agree. And I do have a financial limit for all of my nephews and nieces, which I try and stick to. But I mean, it's very difficult, isn't it?
Yes.
And there is inflation, and of course, then they expect various things because their friends get those things, and so on and so forth.
And then you give them the encyclopedia, they get whatever. And
I give them an educational or a video of my best bits on television, which they all love. So this story is quite interesting, though. This is about the grottos and Great Grottos, which is Britain's biggest supplier, runs 48 grottos, 270 Santas and 512 elves. And they are now sending out these adverts for Santas and elves. They're listed across the country just a week before they're due to start.
Recruiting little people.
Yes, but also, what about all these people? I don't know if they get paid. I assume they get paid. So therefore, that's a good opportunity if you want to be an elf.
There you go.
Yeah. There you go. Hugh, thank you for the moment. We'll continue our conversation after the break. Keep your messages coming in, please. How important is Remembrance Day to you?